Welcome to the Single Lady Estates podcast. My name is Bobby Wasserman, and I'm the founder of Single Lady Estates. Thank you for spending some of your time with us. We have a really important show today on how to stay safe during these crazy times. Surges in crime seem to grab the daily headlines, and while crime statistics are hyper-local issues, the overall trend for many types of crimes over the past few years is basically up. Here in Los Angeles, there has been an alarming increase in property crime post-pandemic. Since 2020, robberies involving firearms are up 57%, vehicle thefts are up 44%, and property crime is up over 5%. As a resident of Los Angeles, my traditionally quiet, pleasantly uneventful hillside neighborhood has recently been hit by numerous burglaries. The police response has been fantastic. Response times are short and neighborhood watch meetings and activities are up. So there is a better understanding of what's going on, so we are better able to have safety and security within our homes. And I'm grateful that my neighborhood's LAPD Senior Lead Officer from the Topanga Division, Dinse, is here with us to discuss what's driving the general uptick in crime and provide us with some general safety tips that everyone can apply regardless of where you live. So Officer Dinse has been with the LAPD for 24 years and has been a senior lead officer serving Woodland Hills for 13 years. Officer Dinse worked the gang unit for over 3 years in the LAPD Foothill Division and has been recognized for the Seconds Count program that prepares schools and businesses for responses to violence such as active shooter. On a personal note, I'd like to say that our neighborhood is incredibly grateful to have an LAPD officer like Sean. We all have his phone number and email address, so we are able to reach him if we need him, and he is always responsive, all hours of the day and night. Thank you and welcome, Sean.
Thank you so much, Bobby, for having me on your show. This is definitely a privilege to talk about some of the things that are happening in the city of Los Angeles, but I'd like to really take a chance to get more in depth about who I am. I come from a background of LAPD officers. My dad was retired LAPD deputy chief with 34 years on. My mom was a retired civilian with LAPD with over 30 years on. I have two brothers. I am currently married for 18 years with my beautiful wife. I have a 17-year-old daughter. I have a 14-year-old son that I currently am coaching his soccer team, and also part of the AYSO soccer board that I have the opportunity to help build out their program. And on a personal note, I have 2 dogs, 3 cats, 1 Holland Lop bunny. Please, if you do have rabbits, it's probably not the best thing to keep them in your house because they chew up your baseboards. But that is part of my family. And I do have a typical cop mustache and don't mind a cup of coffee with a donut here and there.
Well, thank you for that. I did not realize that your family has been of service for generations. Single Lady Estates is a national community, so I'd love for you to explain some overall crime trends and what's generally behind those trends.
Obviously, I'm in the business of crime. In many cases, it's really kind of the negative world of what everybody has to deal with. And so I like to keep it a little bit light here and there because it is a little depressing to be talking about topics like this. And so when you talk about crime trends, in your community, in your neighborhood, especially in the city of Los Angeles where I work, I'm assigned LAPD Topanga Division, which is on the west side of the San Fernando Valley, kind of butts up against LA County and Calabasas area. And, citywide, we're seeing a huge increase of crime. It's not just property crime, which is concerning, even though everyone's impacted by crime. It's the violent crime that I'm really kind of concerned about. Property crime is something where it could be replaced. Everyone works hard for their property and no one deserves to have their stuff taken. And it does play on the psyche, but violent crime is definitely the true victimization of society. And that spike of violent crime in our communities is actually impacting our neighborhoods. And, just to throw out some ideas of what I'm talking about with violent crime, in 2013, in the city of Los Angeles, we had 16,524 violent crimes. In 2021, we have 30,078 violent crimes. I mean, that's a huge increase. And there's some cause and effect things that we're going to I'll bring up later in the podcast that could be causing that. And then you look at property crime. In 2014, we had 83,139 property crimes. In 2017, we had 101,618 property crimes. In 2019, we had 95,169 property crimes. In 2020, we had 86,474 property crimes. In 2021, we had 90,090 property crimes compared to 2014, which was 83,139 property crimes. Doesn't seem significant, but property crime was decreasing all the way up to about 2014 until we started seeing an increase, and the pandemic played a little bit into that.
I can understand, like with everyone home for the past 18 months, it's really not surprising that property crime went down. But now as people are out more and property crimes are on the increase, what are you seeing now that has surprised you or is different, maybe more sophisticated than pre-pandemic? And I was also curious if there was a link between violent crimes and property crimes.
This trend is probably caused by multiple factors. There are some laws that have changed going back to about 2009 that have kind of created this mess. The pandemic played into it too, maybe amplified it a little bit more. But I kind of actually saw this on the horizon. I knew this was going to happen because I was kind of barking about it back in 2009 that we're going to have some problems coming our way. And a couple of those laws that changed, and just to give you some ideas of those laws that have changed, is that in 2009, our state legislators actually increased the value of property crimes, that if you steal something over that amount, it would be considered a felony. It originally was $400. If you stole more than $400, that would turn into a felony. In 2009, they increased that theft threshold to $950. So you could steal something over $950 and it would now be a felony. But let me tell you, $950 is a lot of money. $400 is a lot of money. So starting with that trend, you started seeing an increase in, you'll started seeing an increase in crime. And then due to an actual state lawsuit by inmates in the state jail system, saying that there was inhumane conditions and that the jail system was not capable of humanely taking care of all those that are actually in the jail system, the lawsuit caused the judge to order the state prison system to say, hey, listen, you need to reduce your prison population by a certain amount. And so what that created was the state legislators had to create now something that would help reduce that prison population. And that prison population, more than likely would end up back on the streets. And so that started kind of the downward trend, if not the upward trend of the problems and issues that we're seeing today.
Okay, wow. So focusing on homes, in your experience, can you segment out home invasion and burglary crime types by gated community versus traditional single-family home neighborhood, and condos and townhomes versus single-family homes?
People think that when they live behind gates, and a lot of locations are especially condos and townhomes are behind gates, you get this sense of security or more of a false sense of security, that you think that you're actually in a safer place. In fact, that kind of lets your guard down, and then you kind of open yourself up to the potential for being a victim of a property crime, especially in, say, apartments too. Is you think that your vehicle, say, is in a safe place and it's gated, but it doesn't take much for someone to come in behind someone that's actually entering into the complex, follow them in, and then they have the entire parking lot to themselves. And then another thing with, say, townhomes and condos is, I don't know if there's the same sense of community that you may have in a residential area. Really, the only thing that seems to be the focal point for, say, a townhome or a condo or with an association is usually the HOA, and the HOA kind of is the director of or the leader of, say, a neighborhood watch. And every once in a while you get a community member from the condos or townhomes that actually step up and actually organize, say, a neighborhood watch program. But where you find a majority of your neighborhood watch programs in areas that actually really the people come out of their houses and work together and talk to each other and really look after each other is really in the residential area. But like I said, anyone can step up and be that leader and organize your community to look after each other.
Do you find that in like condos and townhomes or even gated communities that if your guard is let down, do you find that there are more crimes that occur like maybe farther apart, but in clusters? It's not just one unit or house that's hit, it is several, and then they go away? Or is there a pattern that would differ from a single family home neighborhood?
I mean, obviously, when you have multiple units right next to each other, you would assume that the possibility of, multiple people being victim of, say, one person or two people is greater. I don't see it so much being the trend. For that, the one thing, if there's one thing where you're more likely or there's multiple victims in, say, a condo or townhome complex, is actually mail theft. The community mailboxes get broken into all the time. And the purpose of breaking into those mailboxes is to steal your identity. And so actually during the pandemic, one of the biggest crimes we saw occurring was because criminals really couldn't go out and break into houses. They probably were breaking in some cars. Even the criminals were a little scared to go out and about because they didn't know, what COVID had to offer for them. And so we found that a lot of the condo complexes, apartment complexes, townhome complexes, their mailboxes were actually broken into. And so we saw an increase of actual identity theft.
Interesting. That leads me into my next question. Maybe the mailboxes specifically you can address, but what are the different types of security that you would recommend for the type of home you have, whether it's a condo, townhouse, or a single family home?
I don't think it really changes. The only thing that really changes when it comes to how you secure your property is the level of control you have of your property, right? Because you have to fall within the guidelines of the HOA. Because the HOA kind of controls what you can or can't do. I know where I'm seeing a little bit more control by owners of townhomes and condos and even apartment complexes. They're actually using ring systems or Wi-Fi camera systems at their front door to help deter actual people from breaking into complexes or their apartments, and or it really becomes a deterrent to say, hey, maybe I'm not going to break into something because I got captured on camera. I once had a security company technician come over to my house, and I asked for him to install more alarm pads on my windows. And obviously, you want to look at the places where somebody could break into your house, right, or your residence, your weak spots, right? Those are the places that you want to alarm and make sure that they're covered, whether with cameras or with alarm systems. And so this guy came over to my house, and he said, "Why do you want more alarm pads on your house?" I said, "Because I brought you to my house to install them. That's why I want them." And he said, "Well, you've got all the necessary security measures." I said, "I do? How do you know?" And he said, "Well, I'll tell you what they are." I said, "Okay, tell me." He said, "Well, when I'm walking up to your house, you have a gate around your house, which creates, I guess, separation from the actual street, so it doesn't make it as easy for someone to access to your front door or your property." And then he said, "You have an American flag out in the front of your house." I said, "Interesting, American flag. What does that mean?" He said, "Well, you have an American flag, so more likely you're probably going to have a gun in that house." I was kind of surprised by that. When he picked that off, that's what he thought was something that, say, the criminal was looking at. And then he proceeded to say, "Well, you got dogs. They cause noise. And so not all criminals like to go into a house where there's dogs. The cats, they don't care about the cats. The dogs, yeah, I think the dogs could be a little bit of an issue for them." And he just proceeded to the laundry list, all these things about my house that he said, I don't need any extra security. So pretty much what he did is he criminally profiled my house, or as a professional security company, profiled my house and said, "Hey, listen, you're doing all the right things." And so that's good. As a police officer, that feels good. And that's the stuff I preach. But for him to tell me that was interesting.
What you're saying is that, so the security that you would have, like even for a single family home, you would really carry over if it's a condo or a townhouse. Are there different things that you would look for?
So it's almost like you have to start over every time you go to a new location. You almost have to look at your house as if, what would a burglar do, right? What would a thief do? What would a criminal do? If you're looking at your house, where are the spots that are vulnerable? Right? Everyone's got vulnerable spots in their house, but the problem is everyone's so excited to get in their house. It's kind of on the the back of their minds of the last thing they think about. But the first thing you should be really thinking about is obviously securing your property. And then the second thing is the same as an alarm system or all these security measures we're talking about. Your neighbors are as much as the solution to protecting your property as the physical items you actually put in your house to protect it.
If someone's looking to be part of an HOA or looking to buy in an HOA, what are some of the questions that someone might ask about security that could be used as more of a safety barometer to ensure that that development or HOA has safety as a priority?
The first people I go to is not going to be the HOA. The first people I'm going to go to is the local police department that you live in. Right, and reach out to that community liaison to get a lay of the land of what's going on in that neighborhood, right? They have the best view of what's going on in that neighborhood. Then there's also another website you could actually go on to called crimemapping.com. And that gives you the opportunity to be able to look at the crime maps in the area and see what's going on in my neighborhood. Because a lot of times the HOA, there's a lot of politics that goes into the HOA, and sometimes there's some egos, and sometimes there's some power control things that happen in HOAs. So I don't know if you're going to get the best answer from them. I would say the last thing you would do prior to actually going into or reaching out to your HOA is find out all that information first, so you can actually approach them with that information and see how they respond to it, right? And then you can say, hey, what measures are you doing to actually protect this community, because A, B, C, and D is happening around you per LAPD or the local police department. What measures have you taken for your property to actually better secure it?
Oh, that's excellent. And if we shift to a single family home neighborhood, as a single woman, or whether you're professional or you have kids or don't have kids, what do you want to look for or avoid in your house purchase?
That is the $1 million question. I don't know if there's one particular thing that you're looking for when you're searching out for that new home. Your neighbors or the neighbors neighboring houses from the house you're looking at have been living there. They know the neighborhood. They understand the issues. I mean, obviously, I guess your worst case scenario is you move into a house you weren't given information about a nightmare neighbor, that is causing all kinds of havoc, But really, if you're looking at a house or you're looking at a specific location, a condo, a townhome, an apartment, you kind of have to do your homework. And it's actually a breath of fresh air to actually get a phone call from a resident or a prospective buyer that's looking at a property, and they actually ask me, hey, what's going on in that neighborhood? What's going on? What do you see that I should be worried about? Because that means that they're doing their due diligence to actually figure out, what am I, number one, looking for? Is this what I'm looking for? Do I want to get involved in that? And if I do get involved in that, is it going to take, some work to actually make my neighborhood a lot safer? So, and the way the prices of houses are, a lot of people have no choice.
Yeah. I got to tell you, one thing I'm really impressed with in my neighborhood is that we really look out for each other. We're all ages, ethnicities, all political persuasions, and we really look out for each other through Facebook pages, group texts, neighborhood watch meetings, as well as the occasional block party. Are there any tips you can share on some best practices for growing and maintaining a strong, safe neighborhood?
So your neighborhood, your community is the first line of defense for any issue, right? With the introduction of social media, it really opened doors to your neighbors. There's a website that you can go to. I guess it's a social media website called Nextdoor, where you have the opportunity to be able to communicate with your neighbors. Working with your neighbors is huge, right? They're the ones that should be looking after your house, right? I wish there was more police. I wish, when you live in the city of Los Angeles, as big as we are, we don't have that many police officers, right? We don't have enough to be able to patrol all these streets. And really, the only way that you bring a police officer in your neighborhood is a radio call, something bad's happening, or you get ahead of the game and you reach out to your local police department and become involved, right? Reach out to your community liaison officer. And with LAPD, it's a senior lead officer. And LAPD has done an outstanding job of creating liaison officers for their community, right? They're point of contact, right? Patrol officers don't have the opportunity to be able to, reach out to you, go to your block parties, do neighborhood watch meetings. It's your senior lead officer that actually has those opportunities, right? And if there's questions, concerns, or issues, that senior lead officer should be part of that community, right? And that neighborhood watch group around that residential area is only as good as the people that get involved.
Yeah, in our neighborhood, during a recent break-in, it only took 5 minutes for the burglars to get in and out with goods. It was a Sunday afternoon with a lot of people around, and the LAPD took less than 12 minutes to respond. And that response included 2 helicopters and 6 patrol cars, which was, it was like Armageddon. It was terrific.
I wish that was the response all the time, though.
So let's say you've done all your homework and you've installed a great system and you still get burglarized. What do you need to know from that point on?
When you live in a big city, there has to be an expectation in your world that there's a potential that you could become a victim of something, right? Right now, we're seeing catalytic converters getting stolen left and right. Why? I don't know. I don't know why that's the big ticket item. Literally, we're getting video surveillance after video surveillance of literally people pulling up a car jack in the middle of the night on your driveway, and they have this saw, this rechargeable saw that they're going under your car, removing your exhaust system, and they're looking for the precious metals that are in the exhaust system, and they're taking off with them, and we're seeing this. I mean, it's a big spike right now, but living in a big city, you have to expect that you're going to be a victim of crime. So what that should make you do is become more vigilant, right? A lot of times, and in our world today, you see a lot of people in their cell phones. In fact, I work the MTA, the transit, which is down in the rail system, and also the bus system. And a majority of the time when you're watching people move from point A to point B, their heads are down in their cell phones, right? They have no idea what's going on around them, right? And I get it. You have a lot of things going on in that cell phone, but it's such a distraction. So until you're in a safe spot or safe place to be able to actually, access your cell phone, you should really pick your head up and really look around, because victimization is the biggest, true victimization, where you say you lived in a plastic bubble, or you lived in a kind of, nothing will happen to me. And then once you get your bubble burst, then that victimization is really hard to deal with. So, living in a big city, how you prevent and deter becoming a victim is just be aware of your surrounding, be vigilant, don't allow the common thief or the criminal to take advantage of you. When you go to the gas station, your head should be on a swivel. It shouldn't be in your cell phone. It is. The criminal is looking to prey on somebody. So, don't be the easy target. It really is what you should do. And obviously be proactive. Reach out to your police department, reach out to your neighbors, communicate on social media through all those different networks that really help exchange information. Just be aware. And if you could prevent those things from happening, that's great. But now you become a victim of a crime. It's the unknown that's so scary.
Yeah. So here's the $1 million question. What can residents do to help the police do their jobs more effectively when it comes to home and neighborhood safety?
Just be involved. With a minimal amount of police officers that we have, right, we just can't do it all. And LAPD has done a really good job of empowering the community to be part of that, keeping everyone safe. In fact, we actually have a volunteer program at LAPD divisions now, where you actually get to go drive around in neighborhoods and look out for potential crime. Not that they're really witnessing much crime, but really it's a force multiplier, and it's another vehicle out there that actually states Los Angeles Police Department. And really, the community is the force multiplier. And the more people we have out and about that are eyes and ears, that are looking after their community, and actually able to report the information that is needed to prevent and deter crime, that's the goal, right? You don't want to wait till you become a victim. You want to get it, taken care of before it happens.
Yeah. In our neighborhood, we have this coffee with a cop. I guess in the Topanga Division, they have a coffee with a cop. And I think that's weekly, where you can meet and ask questions. And it's really getting to know the officers. I've never seen that before in anywhere I've lived. And I've lived in several states. And I just think it's terrific.
It's all about the relationship, right? There's business relationships. There's family relationships. There's work relationships. And then there's the community relationship. And at least Los Angeles Police Department, and not every division has it down, but The relationship between the officer and the community is huge because just like you mentioned at the beginning of this podcast is you have my cell phone and you have my email, right? I'm the point of contact for your community. If something happens, once again, it's the unknown. If something happens in the community, you want to know, right? Because the unknown is actually what scares people the most. Why is a helicopter flying over my head right now? Right? They think a murder suspect is run around on the loose when they don't realize it's just airship that's circling over a property, making sure that the house wasn't broken into. Right? So being able to answer those questions, to answer the unknown, is actually the goal. And once you actually learn what that information is by having that relationship with that community liaison officer, right? It's half the battle. You are now that much more empowered to protect your neighborhood or have that information to know that, things aren't as bad as what they seem per se.
I would like to ask you really quickly a very, very broad question on domestic violence. So for women out there who are on the other side of an abusive relationship and are now living on their own, either with or without children, is there any advice you can offer on what to look for in a new home or neighborhood that will help improve their peace of mind?
That is a good question. We deal with different levels of domestic violence, and in fact, right now, I'm currently working with someone who went through a bout of domestic violence, and which caused them actually to be homeless and addicted to drugs because of depression, and so that really drove her into that. Into that world, and finally she's been able to pick herself up and is now empowered and sober and doing really well. But she's still a victim of domestic violence. So the one thing I say for any victim of domestic violence is you have to empower yourself to take back control, right? That is the goal, right? You're in control. You're the one making the decisions. Your family, your kids are what you're fighting for. So once you're empowered and past the part where you're going to be a victim of domestic violence anymore, then obviously working with your neighbors to help look after you in the event you're having problems or issues with your significant other. Really, it's once you're empowered, then it'll help you empower yourself to make sure that you build the boundaries around your new home or your new place, right? Because your protection, your safety is the utmost, and obviously making sure your children's safety is also very important.
Excellent. And for our final question, so from a seasoned police perspective, what are the top 3 pieces of advice you'd give to women homeowners or women looking to purchase a home on their own?
My daughter, I do not like her going out and about without any type of self-defense. I want to make sure she's able to protect herself. I want to make sure she's aware of what's going on in her surroundings, and really be empowered to respond to it if something does happen. I don't know if there's 3 things that I would necessarily list out per se, but self-defense is always a great empowering, for mind and body to know that in the event something ever does happen, you're coming home and all of a sudden there's a weird car in front of your house, right? Do you pull into your driveway if you don't know who's in that car? I guess that's a common sense decision. If you're walking down the street and you see someone behind you, do you just keep on walking down the street with your head down in your phone? No, you pick your head up and you confront the threat and or put yourself in a situation where you're in a public place where you can make sure that you're in a safer place. So really, at the end of the day, it's about common sense. And if you can use the common sense, pull your head out from your phone when you're in positions of weak spots or weak locations where you could be confronted, really just be empowered to know your surroundings, know that you can react to it, and put yourself in the best position to win.
Excellent. Sean, thank you so much for your time today. I know that you're incredibly busy and you've offered some really incredible tips and insight for what's going on today. And I just, in this age of technology, we tend to think of communities as only online and virtual. Yet I think that our discussion today really goes to show that knowing your neighbors and being involved in your local community is so important to keeping you safe and just having a better home ownership experience.
Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity to be on your show. Your show is empowering women to take back control and know what they need to do when they're moving into a new environment, right? Because even the unknown of a new environment is scary, right? It's exciting, but it's a little scary at the same time. But knowing that there are opportunities for them to take to make their community safer, make their area safer, make them safer, make their families safer is the goal.
So thank you everyone for listening to the Single Lady Estates podcast. To learn more about the information that Officer Dinse discussed and to join our community, go to our website at singleLadyEstates.com, connect and engage with our community, and be sure to subscribe to our podcast. Thank you.